Okay, colleagues, we're convening a little bit later than expected, and I will call the meeting to order and invite someone to read the land acknowledgement, and then I have some quick remarks. Who would like to read? Councillor Sullivan, thank you.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So just quickly, over the last week, I just wanted to recognize the efforts of both our Masonic Lodge and the Kentville Women's Volleyball League, both of whom went to considerable efforts to raise additional funds for our CT scanner and our local Kentville District Hospital. I understand the CT scanner is about a month out from performing its first CT scan, so we know that the generosity of the community has surpassed all of our expectations, but in another way was very predictable because the foundation indicated early on that they would meet the goal that they had set for the community ahead of time, and certainly that is what's happened. But I want to thank the Masons Wild Game dinner chefs and volunteers for a sold-out dinner once again. They've been doing the Wild Game dinner for many, many years now, and also the Women's Volleyball League, both of whom really rallied and ensured that our hospital and the new CT scanner it remains a priority for our community. Also, tomorrow is Pink Shirt Day. This is a day, February 26th, that North Grenville has recognized year after year. So we encourage everyone to join us in wearing pink to promote empathy and show solidarity against bullying. I think we can all appreciate that every act of kindness can make a big difference. Two more things very quickly. Last evening, there was a public information session for our additional residential units initiative, and we were so pleased last night to see a full room of individuals, both urban and rural. These were property owners looking to get more information about the ARU program, and in particular, a $10,000 grant that one may be eligible for if, in fact, your application aligns with criteria that's been set out for the pilot, and all information is available on our website. And in conclusion, just a quick reminder that tomorrow is the last day to nominate an outstanding community member for our North Grenville Civic Awards. This is always a great privilege for council to review some really worthy submissions and take the opportunity to express our gratitude and our thanks for all those who step up time and time again for our community. So with that, colleagues, we will go to approval of the agenda. You will see just a number of modifications, which include that item I.4 is being removed from the consent agenda for February 25th and being deferred to a special meeting of council on March 3rd at 5:30 p.m. And that there has been an amendment to tonight's agenda in regards to the addition of a Whitney Road petition discussion. Finally, we are looking to move item K.6.1 to immediately precede item H.1. I think that'll give Ms. Hurlbert, who's with us this evening, an opportunity to speak earlier on the agenda. So, Council, that is the agenda as presented. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could move K.6.2 further up the agenda so it's closer to the delegation. This is regarding the Busker Fest pre-approval.
I believe that was the intention. I see what you're saying. Right. So K.6.1 is what we're looking to move so that it's closer up on the agenda to follow the delegation. That's the intention. I may have misread the number. If I did, we mean the item around the Kemptville Busker Fest pre-approval of funds, K.6.1. Okay. K.6.1? Wrong agenda. There we go. Now we understand. Okay. Once again, K.6.1 is being moved to precede item H.1 so that it, I think, follows our delegation. Okay. Excellent. So with that, colleagues, if I see nothing else, I'm going to look to a motion and a mover and a seconder for the adoption of our agenda. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor O'Sullivan. Any further comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, please. Excellent. Thank you. And next, colleagues, is our presentation from Kemptville Busker Fest. So I'll welcome colleagues to come down. Oh, right. Thank you. And while we're bringing colleagues down, I apologize. I missed the opportunity to ask for disclosures of interest. So I'll look to any council colleagues for disclosures in regards to any matter on the agenda this evening. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Peckford. I, Debbie Wilson, declare a conflict of interest with items H1 and item K61 on the agenda. Delegation of the Old Town Kemptville BIA, Kemptville Busker Fest pre-approval of funds for the reason I am a current member of the Old Town Kemptville BIA Board of Directors.
Thank you very much. And I note that that is likely in writing and you'll submit it to the clerk after the fact if you have not already done so. Okay. All right, so that's our disclosures. So we'll welcome Sierra and Marianne. And just for the record, if you could just provide full names so that anyone at home watching, and for the record, municipal records, we have all the information that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sierra Jones-Martel, and I'm the chair of the Kemptville Busker Fest Organizing Committee.
And you can move that mic down if it's easier. There you go.
Marianne Lang, Chair of Logistics and Operations for Busker Fest.
So I guess at the last council meeting, there was some questions about the reserve that we have in the Busker Fest line on the BIA budget. And I guess just to speak to that, it's essential for us to have that, to be able to move forward year after year. We are trying to make Busker Fest bigger and better each year. So to be able to do that, we would like to take advantage of fundings and grant opportunities where possible. Unfortunately, the ones that we specifically want to apply to, we are ineligible for. So this year, we are trying to strive to become a 2-day festival and grow and expand. And in having that kind of emergency money, it allows us to start booking acts before we can actually get sponsorships that slowly trickle through. And it's also just on the day of, if there's any emergencies, like equipment breaks down, we need to be able to have access to funds to be able to purchase what we need. And just in addition to that, the 18,000 that is on the line, those are an aspiration for our sponsorships, and it's not a guarantee.
Great, great. Anything else? Okay. Good, okay. So with that, council colleagues, any questions for representatives? Okay. I would only ask, how's it feeling this year? I know last year was a really big year, huge numbers, great weather. So curious to know, I know with a transition in the executive director, I know Mr. Johnson was obviously someone who was a big part of Busker Fest and cared deeply about it. Curious to know how you feel it's coming along.
Yeah, so Darren is deeply missed, but he does join us virtually online when he can, which is really great. And we're just striving to hopefully continue what he thought would be the best thing for Kemptville. It's going well. as I said, we are trying to make this a 2-day festival, which will make us more eligible for more funding. And yeah, the pieces are coming together. We were able to secure our title sponsorship again with Urbandale Construction, which is really big. And yeah, I think it's going well, and we're excited to start announcing some of the plans we have, and it's going to be really exciting, especially since last year was just the ultimate day, which is the weather, and everything just worked out, and it was just so great. So I'm hoping we can continue that. I don't know if you've had any. No.
And by virtue of extending it 2 days, just while we have you, what will it look like? Will it still have that sort of jam-packed kind of day one agenda? Are you looking to spread things out over 2 days? What's your thought?
Yeah, so we will still have the Saturday of the full day programming, and we right now are trying to do a Friday night component just to take advantage of some of the local talent and some of the buskers who can shine a lot more with some of their night performances with lights and like a big family-friendly celebration, so.
So the 2 days is the Friday evening and the Saturday, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And in terms of your sponsorships, obviously you have had Urbandale for a number of years, which is awesome. It's great. And as you see more new people and new companies coming into the community, how has the reception been from your perspective in terms of securing some of those additional sponsorships?
So as you had pointed out just a little bit earlier, that there has been some organizational changes. So I will say it has been a bit challenging. Just because we don't really have anyone right now on our sponsorship committee. So it does fall to kind of a number of us. So we have reached out to a number of our past sponsors, and the reception is good. So they're slowly coming in, and then the next step is just finalizing our sponsorship prospectus to hopefully reach out to a bunch of new people, and we have a whole bunch of ideas about who to approach for that.
And maybe my last question before we move on, I'm not seeing any council hands, is do you do out-of-area advertising? I presume you must, right? So I understand, sadly, I was at yet another hockey tournament for the May long weekend last year, but I understand that part of your strategy clearly is to bring people in from outside of the community, introduce them to North Granville if they don't know it already, or get them to spend a little more time here. So will you continue, or I presume you've done it in the past and you plan to continue?
Yes, so last year we were able to utilize some advertising in digital billboards in a number of buildings in elevators in Ottawa. And we also had a really huge billboard in what I think is one of the busiest intersections in Ottawa at Prince of Wales and Hunt Club, Riverside area there. And yeah, so we hope to continue that because again, as we try to make use of external funding and grants, a lot of it is showing that a certain percentage of your attendance is coming from outside of a certain, kilometer radius. So yes, we will continue to try to draw people in and show them what North Granville is all about and hopefully gain some longtime supporters.
Well, clearly it paid off last year, so hopefully you can build on that momentum. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else from council colleagues. So with that, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And I'll just look to council for a motion to accept the presentation by Kempo Busker Fest for information purposes. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Strachian. Excellent. So that carries, and we thank you. And I think we're going to transition over to Ms. Holbert, if I'm not mistaken, shortly. I think we have to deal with the consent agenda first. No, we can do it right away. Oh, well done. Okay, so Ms. Holbert, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the subject of funding for Kemptville Busker Fest with tonight's request for early release of the funds. This is an event that has grown in prominence and importance for our community. The support of this event is a collaboration between the municipality, the volunteer organizers under the Old Town Kemptville BIA. I understand there were questions about the reserve funds that the group has, and I brought some more context beyond what's in the report for council this evening, just to speak to that specifically and explain why staff feel maintaining the full funding is appropriate and crucial for the event's continued success and growth. So the reserve fund is essential for the sustainability of the event, but it's meant to cover unexpected costs, early expenses, and potential emergencies. It's prudent practice for any event or organization to have a financial cushion to protect against unforeseen circumstances, such as weather disruptions, changes in vendor costs, emergency repairs, or equipment replacement. The reserve ensures the event's ability to proceed smoothly even if unanticipated challenges arise. Moreover, having a reserve fund allows the group to plan and grow. As the event looks to expand from 1-day to 2-day format, the need for financial flexibility becomes even more critical. The organizers will require funds to support this transition and the increased operational complexity. However, when the time comes, due to the timing of the potential new funding program, the organization will likely have to commit to 2-day programming with a minimum of 5 hours per day and take the risk that the funding will be declined within weeks of the event. And they will already have committed to and promoted an expanded event with its associated costs. It's a widely recognized best practice for event organizers to maintain reserve funds. Having some funds in the bank allows for better planning and helps avoid having to secure emergency funding, which could delay or complicate the event's execution. In addition, having the grant secured helps demonstrate the event's stability and reliability to potential sponsors, which are key to increasing the event's overall budget. Many funding opportunities, both public and private, also favor events that have demonstrated financial stability and strong support from local municipalities. While the event organizers work diligently to secure sponsorships, there's always an inherent risk that sponsorship goals will not be fully met, especially in an uncertain economic climate or if local businesses are unable to contribute as anticipated. If the sponsorship revenue falls short, the reserve acts as a crucial safety net to ensure the event can still proceed. Without this reserve, the event could face significant financial challenges, potentially leading to scaled-back programming or even cancellation. The municipal grant is not only a contribution to the event's budget, but also acts as a powerful leverage tool to secure additional sponsorships. Event sponsors often require assurance that the event is financially sound and supported by the community. The grant plays a role in giving sponsors confidence, and without it, there could be concerns over the event's financial security, which might result in reduced sponsorship opportunity. By continuing to fund the event, the municipality is helping unlock additional funding from the private sector, which further reduces the overall taxpayer burden. Beyond financial considerations, we must remember that Kemptville Buskerfest is a highly anticipated cultural event that attracts visitors from outside our municipality. This influx of people generates economic activity for local businesses, from restaurants and retailers to accommodations. It also strengthens our community's cultural fabric by bringing people together for a shared experience. Municipal investment helps to preserve and expand the valuable community asset. So with all of that said, it is staff's opinion and recommendation that the municipality provide a $20,000 grant to the event again in 2025, and that we provide early release of the funds and approval of the funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. Any questions for Tammy at this stage? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Ms. Hurlbert. I would like to commend the organizing committee who put this on, because I missed it last year as well, but everything I've heard has been fabulous, and it's a well-received event in our community, so thank you to them. My question is, so this is the $20,000 that we already have, or no, we're pre-approving for this year so that they have this reserve, in a sense, to go forward, or were they get this anyway, every year, usually?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the municipality has been contributing $20,000 annually as a grant to the event, but there were questions raised when at a previous meeting, the BIA presented their budget, and it included reserve funds that are also set aside that were raised through BIA sponsorship. And so there were questions about that, and those are the questions we're answering this evening.
Okay, thank you, because my second question was that if all goes well and all the stars line up and they don't need any of this reserve funding, would it just stay in a reserve fund for Busker Fest for future years?
So the $20,000 grant that the municipality would provide and has provided in previous years goes to the operating funds of this year's event. Their full budget for the year typically lands somewhere around $38,000 for the event. So the difference is made up in sponsorship and other fundraising opportunities. So the $20,000 that you're providing would be spent on this year's event. The funds that they have set aside in reserve have been raised over the years in sponsorship and other fundraising and are being maintained to help, again, with emergencies as well as growth of the event.
Okay, thank you. So that reserve fund is targeted for Busker Fest.
That's funds that they have
Yeah,
in
okay.
reserve, yes.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Strachan?
Thank you, through Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you, Ms. Hurlbert. Just one question regarding the grant funding that the Busker Fest is applying for. Is that for this year in order to make it a 2-day event? And what is the grant size that they're applying for?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can speak to that based on the research that I've done. As you know, I do attend their meetings and provide some support to them as they need it. The grant that they're looking at, they would not qualify for in 2025 because they have to have implemented measurement of tourist versus in-town visitors, where they have only implemented a visitor count. So this year they'll be implementing how they're going to measure who's coming from out of town and be able to respond to that. As well, this year they're looking at adding a Friday night event that will help build them towards a 2-year event. So in 2026, the plan is to apply for new funding. But that funding timeline, because of the event falling early in the year, they will be at that point choosing to take a risk where they may get turned down and have to be on the hook for the remainder of the cost.
Okay, great. And certainly it does seem that increasingly this event, from what I understand, is attracting a lot of individuals from out of town, and given the strategic advertising efforts, I think they're obviously part of that success. And as I understand the original intention of Busker Fest, while certainly it was an event that many locals embrace, we also believe that it was designed to bring in a lot of residents and families from outside of the community who typically wouldn't necessarily come to Kemptville on a May long weekend. So I'm certainly hopeful that and it's tricky. I was just thinking, but like doing a visitor count, that's pretty straightforward. But to have someone or a number of people who are accounting for where people are coming from is a whole other exercise, especially when they may have 3 kids in tow and they just want to get to see that first performance. So how do you stop them and allow them to at least share even some basic information? So understand its value, but can appreciate that it has its own complexities. So certainly good luck with that. And I know regardless, it'll be a great event. And I do think moving forward, it is worthy of some of these other external granting opportunities. So can see the value in doing our absolute best, your absolute best to get to a point where you'll be eligible, and then you can make the event that much bigger and better. Anything else for Ms. Hurlbert while she's with us? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. So then, colleagues, I am looking then at the recommendation, which is that we approve the 2025, or pre-approve rather, the 2025 budget allocation for Kemptville Busker Fest in the amount of $20,000. Can I have a mover and seconder? Okay, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Strachan, thank you. Any remaining comments or questions? Not seeing any. Okay, yes.
Thank you for prompting me. It's a great festival, and I know you haven't hit your sponsorship targets, so I'm putting a challenge out to the community to go onto the website, kemptvillebuskerfest.ca, is that correct? And look at the sponsorship package that the BIA offers. It's great exposure. to potential clients and customers. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly if you need any introductions, I'm sure we'd be happy to provide them where you may not have those relationships yet. So, okay, so the motion's on the floor. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Okay, that carries. Thank you again for being here, and thank you, Ms. Holbert. We appreciate it. I think next we're going to move back up to our consent agenda, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Preston. The agenda under consent is considered routine and no longer requires a further discussion. And as such, the adoption of these items is enacted in one motion. Of course, any member of council may pull one or all items for discussion and to be voted on separately. So the consent agenda is before you, colleagues. I'll look for a mover and a seconder unless there are any amendments. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan. And that is that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. And I will call the question. All in favor? Great, that carries. Thank you. With that, we're going to the waiving of fees. No, we did that under consent. And I'm going to move on, catch up with myself. The incoming petition from Whitney Road. I believe, Ms. Preston, that's you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Council this evening. As Council may recall, on December 3rd, we received a presentation delegation from Lynn Paibamese. I may have not pronounced that correctly, so please forgive me. And following that meeting, the resident did seek out a signed petition from residents along her road with relation to the delegation request that she presented that evening. The clerk's office has received that the petition, and under the procedure bylaw, in order for it to be presented at a council meeting, we must pass a motion that it be introduced at a council meeting under consent or expressed by the motion. And so the motion for you this evening is to provide that Council would provide direction to the clerk's office to bring forward the petition for consideration and direction at the next council meeting.
And I was curious, Ms. Preston, when the petition came in, did it come in under our new traffic/road safety policy, or did it come in under a different petition mechanism?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It did come through as a petition, not through the traffic safety mechanism. And as such, staff intend to work with the resident in order to ensure that we can address both matters at the same time when we re-rise the matter with the subsequent staff report.
Okay. For certain. So, and to be clear, because we haven't had a lot of petitions, so I'm just taking the opportunity. Any resident can put forward a petition with a certain number of signatures? Is there a stipulation around signatures?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it does not stipulate a certain amount of signatures. The petition must be accepted by council by motion for it to be introduced at a next meeting. So it would be up to council's discretion as to what you prescribed or accepted as an acceptable amount of individuals on a petition for a specific matter. For instance, if we said there must be 500 signatures for a petition to be accepted, but perhaps there are only 5 residents on a road, then we would that would not be reflective of the best case in a specific scenario. And as such, the procedure bylaw is written in a way to allow that variability for council's discretion.
Okay, great. Colleagues, anything else in regards to this? I think we, as Ms. Preston reminded us, we did have a resident from the road here. I think we certainly suggested that a petition was a mechanism that was available to them. So it seems to make sense that we would move forward. And the recommendation as such is that council direct staff to bring forward the petition received by the clerk's office from residents along Whitney Road respecting safety on Whitney Road for council consideration and deliberation. So do I have a mover? Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Anything else? Seeing nothing. Seeing no other hands, I will call the vote. All in favor? Great. Now we'll move to council remuneration. I believe, Ms. Preston, is this yours? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Council this evening. As you may recall, on January 28th, the Clerk's Office, in contemplation with the Finance Department, brought forward a draft council remuneration bylaw for consideration. At that meeting, we received a number of minor feedback and amendments, and as such, we are presenting a remuneration bylaw this evening for consideration to be passed by first, second, third reading short. And as a note, we have not received any feedback beyond the meeting of January 28th, but we're happy to receive additional feedback this evening for consideration or to make minor amendments as per Council's direction.
Great. And as noted last time, this does not introduce changes to the base honoraria, which are set for a future council. So this, as I understand it, Ms. Preston, you can correct me if I'm wrong, seeks to better formalize other practices around policies, conferences, travel to some extent, as well as anything else in there?
Community events, Madam Mayor.
Community events, that's correct.
Yes.
And I think the one thing that didn't get addressed in this iteration of the policy was mileage, internally or externally.
It does address that mileage can be claimed, but does not provide a stipend in respect, rather for a claim-by-claim basis. I would note that on your point with regards to remuneration, that the only increase it proposes for council's base remuneration is that of the cost price index, which is similar and adjusted for annually for all members of council every year.
That's right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So colleagues, any questions or concerns in regards to this policy at the present time? I'm not seeing any. Certainly, I would say it's a great policy. Thank you. I think it does help to provide some amount of rigor for practices that perhaps previously were more informal. So appreciate that. I know the question of internal mileage within the municipality is something that got contemplated. It's not in this draft, so perhaps it's something that could be brought back as a supplemental report down the road.
Absolutely, that can be accommodated, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments, colleagues?
Yeah, I just have a question about the kilometer rate. It says it's based on CRA. Is that current?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, the policy is written in such a way that the policy can be amended from time to time as the CRA rate changes and reflects the current practice of the government rate, so that the bylaw does not need to be brought back for council reconsideration at every adjustment of the CRA rate, and that the Finance Department will amend their forms as CRA amends their kilometer mileage, so that when a member of council submits a mileage claim, that the form will automatically calculate based on the current and accurate rate.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor, to the clerk. Once this goes through the readings and so on, and it is approved in whatever form by council, what will the effective date be on that? Will it be the effective date of the vote, or is it January 1st, or how is that intended?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Councillor Strachan. The intention is for it to be backdated to January 1st. We do have these considerations within the draft budget that will be presented very shortly to council. However, the base rate would revert and be prorated to January 1st. And events or claims for any of the respective new items, for example, community events, could be submitted for any events following January 1st.
And, I should note, because it was in here multiple times, that obviously for county-related business, right, the municipality of North Grenville is not assuming responsibility for county's travel, et cetera, which totally makes sense, because as many of you know, as mayor, much of my participation at conferences is such that because I'm wearing two hats, the counties assumes those costs, which is excellent because it does diminish the burden on the municipality. And often while I'm at various conferences, I'm representing municipal interests as well as county interests. So I thought it was important to put that in there. And of course, I would say that the counties also has a mileage policy for out of town travel. So when I go to Brockville, my mileage is compensated, which is excellent because I'm going to Brockville a lot and have been over the last few years. So whether or not we contemplate a mileage policy for within the municipality for council-related businesses, I think something that we could certainly revisit. But I was glad to see the distinction between what happens for counties and what happens for the municipality. I thought that was an important caveat in terms of this particular policy. I just also did want to note, because I think there may be a difference, unless Ms. Preston, you checked with the counties. I know that when I sometimes travel for county's business, I do use a Via business ticket because of the hours of the travel, the amount of work one can get accomplished on a train, as sometimes better if you can use their business train. And I note in here that we make no caveat for business-related travel. We speak only to economy travel, and I don't know if that was deliberate or intended. I think it does differ from what I understand the county policy to be.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this was in the original iteration and based on neighboring policies and not to be determined as the only option, and we could absolutely accommodate the iteration or the amendment to allow for business class travel as well.
I believe certainly airline travel should not qualify for that. It's simply, I think, where you're on particularly long train trips. I think that's at your discretion. I just wanted to point out that the county policy is different.
Absolutely. Depending on council's direction this evening, we could accommodate that. As written, we would only be able to reimburse for economy class, but as I said, if council seeks to amend perhaps just for train travel, then we could do so this evening as well.
So because I'm subject to a different policy for most of my travel, I really would defer to council colleagues about whether or not it would represent a meaningful change. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, through Madam Mayor, to the clerk. I think that there is also an offset that is provided when you travel by business class because of meals that are provided and so on. So there wouldn't be an additional claim for a lunch, for example. So there may be some financial rationale where that would actually balance out in the end.
I would say to my colleagues, I think introducing the option of business train travel would be helpful. I know that often we're so busy at those conferences, when you finally get to your train seat, you often even haven't had much of a chance to grab something to eat or what have you. So I would recommend to council colleagues that we allow that caveat to exist in the policy, just for the purposes of getting as much work done as possible while traveling back and forth. And the only other thing that occurred to me, and again, it doesn't really affect me to the same extent, and because my conference participation is largely covered by the counties, is I did note that we're a small council, and but we're a highly motivated council, and I would expect future councils to be the same. So I just wanted to be sure that the stipulated amount for conference travel, as distinct from professional development, is reflective of how this council has participated in conferences in the past. So I don't know if there was an overall allocation in the actual bylaw. I saw a reference to professional development, that there was an allocation for professional development. I don't know if any of us have used much of professional development, but when it comes to the conference allocation, I don't know if embedded in the bylaw there was a set limit. I didn't see one, but I just want to be sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it speaks to 3 conferences per council member, which would be utilized as an estimation when preparing the budget. However, that could be amended from time to time as the budget is passed to reflect council's desires. For example, in 2025, as council is aware, there are a number of conferences which are being held locally, which have a different financial burden than those that are held perhaps in Toronto or outside of the Greater Toronto area, like in London or out of province. And so there may be justification from one year to a next based on the geographic location of certain conferences. And as such, council could, in those given years, pass a motion to amend this or to allow for additional conferences in a year. I note that in 2025, the FCM conference, which is typically held out of province, will be in the nation's capital this year, and it is a great opportunity for council to take advantage of.
And so my only question is, by naming 3 conferences, a maximum of 3, is that embedded in the bylaw? Right, so if there was a particular council member, for whatever reason, who wished to go to a 4th conference because it focused on a particular area of interest, how would that be achieved?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That could be achieved by notice of motion or at budget time to direct staff to allocate additional funds for an additional conference within that budget year.
Would it be more prudent, and again, I think we're so busy within the community, we're not looking for reasons to travel outside, but on occasion there could be a 4th conference. I wonder if it might be more prudent to say up to 4. And that would build into the bylaw the flexibility. We could make it a best practice that we budget for 3. It's just, if it's embedded in the bylaw, am I hearing you correctly, that the only way to attend a 4th conference, and certainly I don't think any of us is looking to attend a 4th conference, would be to amend the bylaw?
We could amend the bylaw, but also a motion could supersede the bylaw to provide individual direction in a specific council year. It also allows for up to 3 conferences per member, which does speak to the flexibility amongst members. Say a council member wished to attend 2 and another attend 4 within the same calendar year, that also could be accommodated based on that. However, I'm not sure if that specifically answers your question, Madam Mayor.
Well, and yes. So certainly in my role as having counties obligations and municipal obligations, I'm at a minimum of 4 conferences a year. Now, again, counties has a different arrangement with me as a representative of counties council. So I wouldn't want to be in violation of our bylaw by virtue of attending 4 conferences. So I don't know if the language in the bylaw is intended to speak to the budgetary implications alone, or is it intended to say that no council member may participate in more than 3 conferences a year?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I do note the CIO has her hand up as well, so I apologize. But my understanding is that this was intended to allow us to help our budgeting process for estimations in our preparation of draft budget.
Right, thank you. I'm just thinking about the unintended implications, that's all. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. The actual wording within the draft bylaw that is here identifies not more than 3 conferences to attend during a calendar year which require overnight accommodation due to the travel distance. So if FCM, AMO, et cetera, are in Ottawa, they don't count within the 3. But we can, on the 3.2, to add an exemption clause if there's special consideration at the at budget time or something to that effect, if that would satisfy with a little bit of flexibility, but still provide us with guidance for at least preparing the draft budget.
I certainly understand the logic of anticipating what conferences council members, or I guess the number of conferences. This reads to me to suggest that if there was a 4th conference that required overnight accommodation, which would be fairly unusual, a council member would be in violation of the bylaw, right, as it's currently written. So unless I'm reading too much into the bylaw, I just want to ensure that there's enough flexibility. And so just to be clear, I'm attending a minimum of 4 conferences a year by virtue of having counties and municipal duties. So I want to be sure individual members of council shall identify not more than 3 conferences to attend, that I'm not in violation of the bylaw, because it would be very limiting for me, given my dual roles, to be outside of the stipulations of my own municipal bylaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this would only apply to council members seeking the utilization of municipal budgetary funds, and so it would not be allocated to when your worship attends on behalf of the counties. So for instance, if you attend 2 or 3 or perhaps 4 through the counties, then by virtue of that, you would have no conferences utilized in a calendar year for the municipality. This speaks to only those for which the municipality is responsible for the costs.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was going to make a suggestion about just making it a total for council as a whole. If this is all about budgetary considerations, so to accommodate the fact that maybe I want to attend 3 and another councillor wants to attend 5, if we just take a look at no more than 15, meaning 5 times 3 for council, it would preserve the budget and allow some flexibility amongst my council colleagues about whether somebody wanted to attend more than 3 a year. Just a suggestion if it's understood.
Thank you. I see Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think Deputy Mayor's suggestion may be the most flexible, because then it isn't tied to individual council members. I do struggle with the 3, though, because had FCM been in Edmonton, I think is where it was last year, out west, then we would be in the situation this year where there would be 4, because Roma is almost always in Toronto, OSUM and OGRA are never here, and then there's Parks and Recs ones, there's the Eastern, Ontario ones, there's ones that are almost always going to be outside of the driving area. And so to the mayor's point, I think increasing that number to up to 4 means that on the years where nothing is taking place in Ottawa, which has happened, then we would have that flexibility. Perhaps combining the 2 of the deputy mayors and the mayor's suggestions would give us the greatest flexibility. So that would be 4 times 5. So not to exceed for the entire council. So if my math is correct, that'd be 20.
Okay. So it sounds like, Ms. Preston, you're just working to that end to craft an amendment. And I should say that, for anyone watching, AMO, Roma, Good Roads have become invaluable opportunities to present North Grenville's case to a variety of different ministries. And to your point, Councillor Strachan, while often the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference is in Ottawa, it's not always. I believe it may be headed back to London, Ontario next year rather. So that, that's one of the foundational conferences that the municipality has used to pitch its case around things like hospice, sports facilities, physician recruitment, sewage treatment plants. Ms. Dunlop? Yeah. So among many, many other priorities that North Grenville has identified. So paramedicine has been another big issue talked about with various ministries at conferences. Of course, that's wearing my county hat, but still deeply implicates access to emergency care in this community. So these conferences, I think, are most worthwhile when we have the chance to interact face-to-face with ministers and their staff, and I think we've made incredibly good use of those opportunities when they've emerged. So I consider these working events. They're not always ones that are convenient, I think, for myself and other members of council to attend by virtue of other caregiving responsibilities, but I think they are such that the value of the FaceTime we get with various municipal officials and provincial officials is such that we can't pass them up. So I think the amendment is just being written in the spirit of ensuring that flexibility exists. Is there anything else, colleagues? I did also want to say that it occurred to me that building in the business travel for train tickets is also quite helpful because usually you can change your ticket without penalty. And that has often happened where we get a ministry delegation that is moved at the last minute and requiring us to make last minute accommodations to train tickets and what have you. And that certainly comes at its own cost. So sometimes the benefit of Via One is that they allow you to do that without cost. So I think there are some economies there in terms of business travel for Via One specifically. So if there's no other comments, colleagues, this evening, the motion for our consideration is that council adopt bylaw 1825, being the bylaw to set the remuneration for council within the municipality of North Grenville. So to amend section 5.4 to read economy or travel/business for train travel specifically, to amend section 3.2 to read not more than 20 conferences would be attended by council as a whole. So that respects the up to 4 conferences per member, and that council directs staff to return with an internal mileage policy for consideration. I would say later this spring to include options for deliberation. All right. So colleagues, I'll look for a mover and a seconder if you're in agreement. So Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, do you have any last questions in regards to the policy, colleagues? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor, please. Great, that carries. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to return to my agenda. So that concludes the council remuneration portion. We have nothing under corporate services, emergency and protective services, or finance this evening. Ms. Dunlop, I know staff are working fast and furiously on a budget, and I believe just to remind anyone watching that the first draft of the budget will be presented March 4th. So which is just next week. So not that far away. So that's great. Thank you. And March 4th is being largely dedicated to that budget presentation. Okay. So we'll now go to planning and development, and we have a presentation by Ms. Martin. You have confused me because you have changed the side of the room you're on. Is this your new seating?
Just like to keep you guessing, Madam Mayor.
I keep thinking, I don't see Amy here. I wonder who's going to give that presentation, but there you are. Okay. And it's the screen. You're partly obscured by the screen. So, okay. So we welcome Ms. Martin for a presentation on Kempo Lifestyles and the reduction of DCs.
Perhaps maybe if the clerk could just throw up, I provided a simplified chart after receiving some feedback that there were a lot of numbers in the report. And so the deputy director just put together a simple chart that details what the request is and what staff's recommendation is. I do want to note that Dr. Chadha is here this evening, so if there are some specific questions that perhaps he can answer, he is here to do so. We did receive a request from Dr. Chadha and his team in regards to the development charges for the Kempville Lifestyles project. They're currently in the process of working through the site plan details and the servicing details for the first building, which would be the 63 multi-residential units. So the total development charge as calculated by staff is just under $740,000. Under the Development Charges Act, there are certain requirements for exemptions and reductions based on the development. So 11 of the units are proposed to be provided at a locked-in affordable rate for a period of 10 years, and those enjoy a 100% exemption from the development charge. And then under the Development Charges Act, through the changes of Bill 23, there were further reductions that are required based on the number of bedrooms. So there's I believe it's a 20% reduction on 2-bedroom units, and then a 15% reduction on the studio / 1-bedroom apartments. So that they already enjoy a discounted rate as per the Development Charge Act. So in total, the development charge relief just from the exemption piece under the act as it exists would be $221,248.15. This would create a development charge owing on the part of the developer of just under $520,000. And the numbers are on the screen for council's benefit. We did receive a...
Ms. Martin, just because you speak very quickly,
I know.
and I'm trying to follow along on the chart. So could you just repeat what you just said and just point it out? Where is it on the chart?
Yeah, so what I just walked council through is the affordable housing exemption rate. So the developer is guaranteed a reduction in the development charge of $221,000, $248,015, which means that the value of the development charge owing currently before any further requests for reduction would be $518,275.85. And I will do my best, Madam Mayor, to slow down. I always say I have a lot to say in my head, so that I want to get it out. And I know I'm a fast talker, so I'll do my best to slow it down, knowing that we are talking dollars and cents, and there's a lot at play here. The request from the developer was to seek further reduction on the market rate units. So of the 52 remaining units that aren't considered affordable as per the agreement and what we're working through. So essentially what Dr. Chadha is asking is that we create it so that the units are discounted at a 50% rate versus the 20 and I think 20 to 25, whatever the Development Charges Act is. So on the last line of the chart, that's the request coming from the developer, which would be to seek an additional reduction of $206,555.35. So if council should wish to provide the rate as the reduction as requested by the developer, the total owing development charge to the municipality would be $266,808.50. Staff have reviewed and have come back with a counter proposal that we're recommending to council, which would be to provide a reduction on the oversized component of the wastewater, the sanitary line that the developer is putting into their development. And this is what spurred the conversation. So in order to service the development, a deep sanitary line is being installed coming down the Pine Hill Road allowance to the site, which sits at the southwest corner of Pine Hill and 43. So as part of that, staff are recommending a credit in the amount of $44,912, which is the oversized credit for the oversizing of the pipe. So if council takes staff's recommendation in regards to only providing a credit on the oversized pipe reduction, the developer would owe $473,363.85 in development charges. That's kind of the crux of what the request is. The letter from the Kentville Lifestyles and Dr. Chadha was included with the council package, but that's the kind of how the numbers break down as to what the developer is, from a statutory perspective, given under the exemptions for the affordable housing piece. Staff's recommendation only on the oversizing portion, and then what the request from Kentville Lifestyles would look like if we topped up that the current reduction for the apartment units based on the number of bedrooms to 50% versus what's in the Development Charges Act. Happy to take any questions. I know it's a lot of numbers, but certainly, and like I mentioned, Dr. Chadha is here if there's questions that he might be better suited to ask, but staff's recommendation is providing that development charge credit just on the oversized portion of the pipe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So colleagues, any questions for Ms. Martin or discussion?
I don't have a question, but I've got a comment regarding what staff has brought forward.
Sure.
First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Chatta for being in attendance and for his proposed investment in North Grenville. It's a wonderful project. Over the last 4 or 5 months, I've been struggling to find assisted care for a 90-year-old father, and it's sort of hit the family and put us on the back leg a little bit. So this idea, your concept of, and it's a successful, proven concept of creating a community within a community where people can age in place is a valuable contribution to the lifestyle here in North Grenville. Council is very busy these days because we're a fast-growing community. And it's not the fact that we're growing so much as the rate of growth. So I do appreciate very much Director Martin and her department and the staff's ability to meet with developers like yourself, Dr. Chatta, and to get projects off the ground. And we can see evidence of this already in the credit for the wastewater oversizing of the pipe. And I appreciate, too, that it's very hard to get these multi-million-dollar projects off the ground, given with ever-rising financing costs and construction costs. But what rather than discount your suggestion, your request, rather than to discount $206,000 further off the eligible DCs. I'm going to suggest that because our housing strategy that we released in 2022 identified targets in the rental market of studio and one-bedroom apartments, that you be given credit for that, or not credit, how do I articulate this? Yeah, DC removed for studio and one-bedroom apartments, but that two-bedroom apartments, we would continue to collect DCs. So I've got some figures here, if that's helpful. I did some scratching on an envelope here. So if the 35% reduction was for one-bedroom units only, that would be a reduction of $136,661 versus the $206,000 that you're suggesting, which would mean that ultimately the amount of DCs we'd be deriving from the project would be $370,000 approximately. So that's what I'm suggesting, having looked at the numbers and appreciating, again, your investment, and also appreciating staff's ability to work with you to try and get a project off the ground. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And certainly I echo the fact that this is a very large development. I think, and Mr. Chatta, we don't have the benefit of earlier presentations where you articulated the objective of, I think, establishing up to 480, more or less. I don't know if you wish to speak to the specifics of the project, or Ms. Martin, maybe you would have the numbers in regards to the number of sort of seniors units going from independent to assisted living. I believe it was in the range of 450 to 480 once the project was complete. Is that the case?
If you may indulge, Your Worship, perhaps maybe Dr. Chatta can just speak to the plans and the numbers. I can get those values. Okay. They're not at my fingertips at this time, but perhaps Dr. Chatta is more well positioned to speak to his project.
And certainly, I think I'm just providing some additional context, certainly for the value of this facility in our community. A number of us had a chance to tour the one in Perth a number of years ago during the pandemic, in fact, and could see how important it was to certainly that community and the region to support seniors to age in place. Clearly, we're really struggling with that in North Grenville. We do have a wonderful retirement living entity at both Kemptville Retirement living and Bayfield, but the number of units there is such that it doesn't allow for, I think, what Mr. Chadha has proposed, which is independent living with appropriate transitions as a senior's ages to more assisted care. So I know this project came with some unforeseen servicing costs, and we certainly recognize that. So I'm certainly very open, Deputy Mayor, to what you've proposed, because I do think it recognizes, as you've stated, a clear lack of rental units, particularly one-bedrooms in our community. And it's amazing how many phone calls and emails I continue to get, and I don't think that I'm the only one. I know others around this table get a lot of communication from seniors who are urgently in need of some rental options as they age and don't have the capacity to maintain a large home anymore, or have lost a spouse, or simply looking to downsize because financially that's what makes the most sense for them. So I think we're eager to see this development underway. So, council colleagues, any other comments or questions? If there are none, perhaps, Deputy Mayor, you'd want to move your suggestion into a motion? Yes, Ms. Preston.
Through you, Madam Mayor, might the Director of Planning and I have a moment to formalize the Deputy Mayor's comments into a motion that he might so move?
Absolutely. I'll just make sure that there are no other council colleagues wishing to make contributions. Not seeing any. Okay, so let's take. Oh, I apologize, Councillor Sullivan. These screens, they're frustrating. I love them, but they're frustrating. Okay, I'm moving mine down. Okay, Councillor Sullivan, fire away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Martin and perhaps to Dr. Chadha, if he is the one that needs to answer. So this building that we're talking about this evening, this is only the first building, correct? The development charges for just the first building of the whole the whole development?
Through your worship, that is correct. So we're just, the site plan that we're dealing with and the reduction is for the first building of the project. So subsequent development of the other buildings would also be subject to development charges, and those would be matters that we would negotiate at that time.
So how many units are in this first building, or is that going to depend on how many end up being one bedroom, two bedroom, or studios?
Through your worship, 63 units are to be provided in this building, 11 of which exceeds the requirements under the zoning bylaw. 11 of those units would be provided at a locked-in affordable rate for a period of 10 years.
So that is 5 units over the required.
That is correct.
Number. Okay.
Yep.
And can we, in terms of development charges, are to pay for the necessary infrastructure in the municipality that is required as we grow and new building happens. So can we afford this additional reduction in terms of providing the necessary infrastructure, for example, sidewalks, multi-use paths, whatever will be able to connect the people who live in this new area, this development, to the rest of the town, like physicians' offices, physio, whatever, if they choose to walk into town?
So in regards to your worship to Councillor Sullivan, so in regards to the development, there are pedestrian and active transportation linkages off the site over to the Kemptville Mall lands. When you reduce development charges, it's less money that the municipality is bringing in to help to be able to pay for those growth-related items. Typically, the municipality would then have to look at how do we restore our development charge for that development into the development charge fund to help fund those future growth-related projects. So anytime there is a reduction, it does have an impact, because then it's less revenue coming in to help pay for those growth-related projects that we budget for on an annual basis. I mean, there are additional benefits. We have a vacant parcel of land as well that's being developed that will now bring in tax revenue much more than what it was before. But it, as to what the math would work out to be in regards to the reduction in development charges and how much over time we would build that back. I wouldn't have those numbers, but I mean, it's, council's discretion when it comes to the waiving of development charges, as to how you want to lead this. But overall, yes, there is an impact on reduction in what we collect, and then the staff having to find other resource avenues to help pay for those projects.
Thank you. And further to that, then, how many more buildings are there anticipated? 3 more? Plus including the recreation area where the pool would be, et cetera?
Through your worship, my understanding is that there's still the care facility, and then the seniors building, and then the plans have changed for the phase to, like, the last phase to the south, I believe, where the plan is to shift to townhouse units, and that would be developed, I think, quite rather early on in the project, as part of the site development.
And the recreation facility with the pool, that would be available to everyone who lives there, regardless of which building they're in?
Through your worship, perhaps maybe Dr. Chadha is better suited to answer that question. I'm not certain as to the business operation, as to how the recreation facilities will be provided to all the development. You'll have to come down to the mic, Dr. Chadha.
So before recognizing Dr. Chadha, I'm going to recognize Councillor Strachian, and then we'll go to Dr. Chadha. So hang on, please.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor to Director of Planning. Ms. Martin, in the letter from Dr. Chadha, he references another development that was granted the exemption, which was also offering about 17% affordable housing. And I'm just wondering, but looking at the rationale for the other development and this one, why one would be granted a greater exemption versus the other or not?
Through your worship to Councillor Strachian. So the information provided in the letter was based on a memo that was provided by the other developer. And the realities of the memo for the other development don't actually reflect council's decision in regards to that file. In regards to that development, there were 43 units being provided, and 21 are locked in at a 10-year rate, so about 50% of the units are being provided. So then the development charge relief was on those units. So 50% of the units, which basically equated to that 50% of the development charge. So even though in the report it said 17% of the units were provided as affordable, the reality is 21 of the 43 were provided as affordable in that development. Again, at that agreed to rate, locked in for a 10-year period.
Okay, that's helpful. I'm glad you asked that question because that was also in my mind, so thank you. So I'll recognize Dr. Chadha to make a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. So to answer Councillor Sullivan's questions about the full built-out site, we absolutely are intending on having all of that amenity space. And for those that did come to Perth, it'll be very similar with a clubhouse, yoga studio, pool, lots of outdoor amenities. And all of those amenities will be accessible to everybody on the site. It's truly an aging in place model. We are implementing bungalow townhomes now, so you can kind of start there and move your way to apartments and then to the retirement home and all the way to assisted care and palliative care. So that is the vision behind the whole site. To be honest, we don't, as a developer, I don't typically ask for these development chart credits, but in this case, we've encountered a significant amount of off-site servicing work that wasn't necessarily accounted for when the site was purchased. And talking with staff, at the present time, there haven't been many additional lands that have been accounted for that will use the infrastructure that we're installing, but I sincerely believe with the amount of growth that Kentville is undergoing, there will be additional lands that will benefit from our infrastructure. It just that hasn't been realized by the town staff at the present time. But I do think that it's really just extending the ability to service quadrants around the northwest where we are currently. and I think that the town will benefit as a result.
And if you would just speak to the number, because we were just reflecting on the number of units. When I say unit, you know what I mean. All forms of housing that will be provided through your development.
Yeah, originally we were in the 400 range. We since have scaled that back.
Okay.
It'll likely be about 350 now.
Okay, thank you. And what proportion of that is assisted living versus the multi-residential building, as well as the townhomes, bungalows?
So I would say about 100 to 150 will be the apartments, the multi-res. Then another 150 will be the care facility, and then about 50 or so of townhomes, but that hasn't been fully established yet in terms of the townhomes.
And these are all rental, is that
Yes.
correct?
Definitely the apartment building and the care facilities are rentals.
Right.
The townhomes is to be determined.
Okay, so they could be sold on the property with a condo fee attached, is
Yeah,
that right?
an association
Buying
fee,
into a,
they would be able to access the all of the amenities.
right, okay. So colleagues, I know, I believe Ms. Preston did want to confer with Ms. Martin, so we'll take a quick break, but I'm just going to recognize Councillor Sullivan, Deputy Mayor. Is there anything else you want to add? Thank you.
Yes, just to further follow up on Councillor Stracher-Yann's comments, I'm wondering, this is the first building. Will there be a request for a 50% reduction going forward every time we get a new building ahead?
I can assure you there will be not a new request. It's strict, like, to be quite honest, as I mentioned before, the biggest issue right now is just to get the services onto the site.
Right.
Once they're on site, the construction costs materially decrease, so I can assure you this would be the only request.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chadha.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, for your question. So Ms. Preston, yes.
Prior to the break, may I please have confirmation from Deputy Mayor Barkley? Is your intention to move the motion to provide the additional 35% reduction on studio and one-bedroom apartments that are classified as affordable in this calculation?
I think it wasn't the affordability caveat, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, if we need to refer to numbers rather than just a global reduction, I'm referring to the report, and I'm looking at the 37 one-bedroom rental units planned.
So the number is 37.
Yeah, the reduction on the one-bedroom units.
As well as studios, or have studios
Well,
already been
studios
accounted
are
for?
already
Yeah.
addressed.
Okay. I believe at this point, we should just take a little break so that you and Deputy Mayor can confer with staff. Thanks. Okay, we've reconvened after a bit of a break. So I know the clerk, in tandem with council colleagues, as well as our staff, were working to craft a motion. I just wanted to ask Dr. Chatter if there's anything else you wish to add at this time, or are we good? Yes, sure. You just have to turn on the mic, please, for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was just speaking with Mike and Amy, and wanted to just again reiterate that the development will be implementing infrastructure in a specific area, which may or may not be used by additional developments. And Kemptville Lifestyles doesn't plan on recuperating any of those costs. Those, as sort of Mike and I discussed a little bit, the development charges of those, developments would likely just be at whatever they would be. So I just wanted to make everybody aware.
For sure, and we recognize that construction financing for multi-res apartments may look very different from construction financing for offsite infrastructure. So appreciate that you're certainly having to contend with some unforeseen costs in terms of getting this proposed seniors community off the ground, but no doubt one that will be, I think, very well embraced as it has been in Perth. So this would be your second. So with that, I think I'm looking to, is it Deputy Mayor to speak to his motion? You may have the language, the wording there.
I'm going to rely on the clerk to read
Sure.
the motion, but before she does that, I just want to again thank Dr. Chatta for his investment in the community and staff for working with Dr. Chatta to try and get it off the ground. The rationale behind my motion is, prior to the council meeting, I took a look at our housing strategy document, and the emphasis there was a target of 70% affordable rental units would be bachelor or one bedroom. So it doesn't include 2 bedrooms in that. So my proposal is different than Dr. Chatta's in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Preston?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the proposed motion reads, "The council provides a further reduction in development charges for the Kemptville Lifestyles Project Phase 1 in the amount of $181,573.35, which represents the wastewater credit of 20% totaling $44,912 and an additional 35% request and the additional 35% requested reduction for one-bedroom units valued at $136,661.35, which would result in a total payable development charges amount of $336,702.50 for Kemptville Lifestyles Project. For the Kemptville Lifestyles Project Phase 1, that includes 63 total units."
Deputy Mayor, does that meet with your expectations in terms of the motion? Just wait for Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I heard you say 1 bedrooms and studios. Does that need to be in there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion reads for 1-bedroom units, and I look to my colleague, the Director of Planning, that I believe there already is a reduction for the studios, so they're not needed within the motion.
Just to confirm, Your Worship, the studio apartments get the 100% relief as they are the affordable units.
So effectively, as I understand it, as per the request for 1-bedrooms, that motion incorporates the requested relief for the 1-bedrooms, just not the 2-bedrooms. Is that my understanding of the intent of the motion, Deputy Mayor? Okay. So the motion's on the floor. Might I have a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Strachian. Is there any further comment in regards to the DC relief being considered today? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Great, thank you. So with that, I believe that we're moving on. Is K.8.1 still on the agenda this evening? Okay. Who's presenting?
I will be, Matt. So the report, the purpose of the report for council is to pass a bylaw for the renaming of a section of Boundary Road, and the renaming that is being proposed is Borderline Road. If I can, unfortunately, I didn't have a presentation made up, but I'll ask if the clerk can put up the attachment to the report, which shows a map of the location for Boundary Road as I go through my discussion here. So as this shows, this section of Boundary Road is located between County Road 19 to the north and Arcan Road to the south, and it is bordered between the municipality and the City of Ottawa. This recommendation was brought based on a resident complaint back in 2021. They were having issues with delivery items to their property. Once staff did an investigation, it was determined that the municipality and the city officially recognize this section of road by two different names, with the municipality recognizing this as Boundary Road and the City of Ottawa officially recognizing it as South Gore Boundary Road. The different names were a result of amalgamation, where the city had two of the same names or Boundary Road names, and changed one of them, which of course was this section of Boundary Road to South Gore Boundary Road. Based on this being identified with two official names, there was, of course, the concern of wayfinding using items such as Google and that would only recognize one of those names on their mapping. More importantly, it was identified from both the municipality and the city that this could pose a health and safety risk for timely response by emergency services. Since the city did not recognize this as Boundary Road and our system did not recognize this road as South Gore Boundary Road, there was the possibility of if a 911 emergency call was put in, depending on which area picked up the 911 call, the road may not be officially recognized. So just as an example, if a resident called in for 911 services and it came through our county emergency services and the person identified it as an address with South Gore Boundary Road, it wouldn't be recognized through the system. Obviously, we would most likely work that out, but when seconds matter through a 911 call, it was identified that rectifying this issue is the best way to move forward. So since both the municipality and the city had different official names, it was identified that the best course of action to ensure services can be provided safely and efficiently was to rename the road that was acceptable to both parties. Since this section road is a border between the two and the same spirit as a boundary road, the recommendation was brought forward as Borderline Road. This name was vetted through the City of Ottawa to ensure there was no further conflicts. It was reviewed by municipal staff as well as United Counties of Leeds and Grenville to ensure this new name would not result in a future conflict if it were approved through council. So if approved, there is a process that was developed by the city that we were looking to follow to inform residents. If approved tonight, it is the current intention that the road name be effective as of April 14th, and notifications will start being sent out to the affected residents next week. On the municipal side, there are 14 properties that have been identified, 8 residential properties, with the remaining of them being agricultural properties. The intent, or the civic numbers would remain the same for residents, so it would only be a road name change. So the process would start place with residents receiving a joint letter from both the municipality and the city that informs them of the approved name change, provides them with a checklist regarding changing of an address, and also there'll be coordination through the city and the municipality with Canada Post to ensure mail continues to be delivered under the old road name for a period of 1 year as a transition period while residents start to move towards the new road name change. So that is the basis of my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Council colleagues? I will recognize, I do have a comment. I do have a concern about the name, and I'm currently not comfortable with the name, but I will defer to council colleagues. Deputy Mayor and then Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the Director of Public Works. I understand that the City of Ottawa and municipal staff got together to finally solve this issue that's first appeared in 2021.
Correct.
So I'm sure everyone's anxious to put it to bed. But like the mayor, I'm not really fond, and it's my personal opinion, of Borderline Road. And I wondered what were some of the other suggested road names.
So thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. There were a couple names presented by both the city and the municipality, names such as Common Road, Neighbor Road, Bertram Road were also presented as part of exploring some options. It was identified through the discussions that naming after any certain individual could pose as further discussion through a number of committees of policy through the City of Ottawa, as well as difficulty with bordering two different municipalities for a name that was common to one municipality but not the other. That may prove some difficulty in getting agreement on. So that was part of the reason why Bertram didn't move forward. We also, the idea of common or neighbor, again, borderline seemed a bit more in the spirit with boundary, which is why that was the name that was moved forward after that discussion.
If I might, and I'm going to recognize Councillor Sullivan, borderline personality disorder is a very well recognized psychological disorder. I have significant concerns about invoking the words borderline, just out of respect for people who do suffer from that condition. If you Google borderline, it's the first thing that comes up. I don't see that the word borderline is common when it comes to a civic address. So I personally feel that we should potentially revisit the name and look perhaps at Neighbor Road. Sounds a little more neutral and perhaps wouldn't come with the same implications. I do think we have to be sensitive to mental health disorders in this day and age, and those are my concerns. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very good point. That was the first thing that came to mind when I read the new name too, was borderline personality. So my other question is, how do you get this updated on GPS and Google Maps? For now, like the GPS in my car still says that Wellington Road is County Road 19. And so I'm just concerned about how long it would take, and how do you make sure that it gets changed everywhere unless you're the president of a country that can change names. But I'm just concerned about how this gets renamed on maps, et cetera, Google Maps, et cetera.
Thank you for the question. And through you, Madam Mayor, I guess for both comments, if there is a preferred name that this council would like to take back, not an issue with that. The one thing we do have to do is vet it, obviously, with the city to make sure there's no conflicts there, but I'm happy to take any recommendation back. And it's been a quick turnaround from a vetting perspective, provided there isn't a name associated with it. So I'm sure it's something we can work towards pretty efficiently to turn back around. In terms of the comment regarding the names on the maps, unfortunately, we don't have the control of them. What we have done in the past and can do is put in a notice to some of those programs Google Maps. As we discovered during their naming of the road, they don't necessarily have to follow, they aren't bound by our rules, but we do inform them of legal road names. Typically, they would like a legal road named for their system, but from our powers of it, that's all we can do is inform them of the legal names and see what changes can be done.
Yes, I think unfortunately, if only we could control Google or Apple when it comes to how they update their algorithms to reflect more accurately, obviously, street naming, it would be excellent. So I've been reminded by the clerk that I can't move a motion, but I'd be looking to a council colleague to potentially entertain a revisiting of the proposed name, but I now see Councillor Strachan's hand, so I'll recognize hers before moving any further.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor, and to Director Finley. As somebody who lives off of Rideau River Road, close to the River Road in Ottawa, but not the River Road in our community, perhaps a word that isn't close to boundary would also be considered, because borderline boundary, I can see that there's going to be ongoing confusion because the words are perhaps a little too similar, and even in people's minds, they may confuse the two because they have can have similar meanings. So I don't have a good proposal. I was looking up synonyms for boundary here to see if there are ones that jumped out, but that may be part of the consideration as well as proposals are going forward. Thank you.
I would be looking for a council colleague to potentially direct staff to revisit the road renaming of Boundary Road to something other than borderline. So I don't have the capacity to do that as chair. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be happy to do that. But I would like to make another comment, is that maybe the difference between one municipality and another municipality, where that happens, is probably not as important to residents in this day and age. So I don't think we need to find a name that's synonymous with Boundary Road or borderline. I think it's only important to tax collectors, really. It makes a difference. So I think the door is wide open, and I'd like to revisit names. Personally, the suggestion of Bertram Road is great. I understand that there are challenges to get it through approval of 6 different committees in Ottawa, but if we've waited 4 years to change the name, I think it's worthwhile revisiting and maybe making that suggestion. Not necessarily of Bertram Road, but have staff come back with another proposal for Ottawa to consider.
So you're going to remove, I think the intention is that council directs staff to revisit the road renaming of Boundary Road with the City of Ottawa.
Yeah, I'd be happy to move that.
Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Strachan? And personally, just to weigh in once again, I do think, I mean, effectively, we are neighbors. So I think the invocation of a neighbor road seems interesting to me. I don't know if the City of Ottawa didn't want to go down the neighbor path, or is this a state of relations between the City of Ottawa and North Grenville?
No, through Madam Mayor, it was just, neighbor was one actually that was brought up through them, so it's already been a vetted name. If that is something council so choose, it would probably help speed up the process, and us coming back with some suggestions. If there is a directive we could get from council, that would much appreciated.
Okay.
I'd be happy to revise or amend my to make the recommendation of
for neighbor
road, and let's get this done.
In a time of geopolitical conflict, I think invoking the word neighbor in this respect is certainly something that is needed across borders. So as opposed to pointing out our border.
Please, that's spelled with a U. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Barclay. Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Finley, neighbor with a U, please. Not the American spelling, the Canadian spelling. Okay, so then the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Strachan as mover and seconder, the motion could be now that council directs staff to revisit the road renaming of Boundary Road with the City of Ottawa to consider the following proposal, Neighbor Road, right? Yes. Okay, so you're both good with that? Okay, any other comments or questions? I do appreciate your consideration of some of the sensitivities that were raised, so appreciate it. And I will call the question. All in favor? Okay. Okay, excellent. That concludes our road name change. I did want to say, however, just before we go on to the next item, I understand that the cities get to meet about the name, but obviously the residents who are impacted, how, again, would they be notified of a name change?
So thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. We will have a joint letter from both the City of Ottawa and North Grenville, and that will be passed out, ensure that it is delivered to all residents, and again, will contain an explanation of what took place, also some additional information in terms of the city. They have a bit more of a defined process than we do, so they have a change of address checklist that is provided with the letter to help residents understand what takes place. So it will be a registered letter that is sent to all property owners. It'll be the property owners, not necessarily the tenants if it's being rented. It's the properties themselves, because that's what we have on file.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think next we're going to the Birds Rapids Waste Disposal Site closure, and
I'll turn it over to Mr. Shipman.
Mr. Shipman, okay, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Okay, I didn't know if you were introducing, so Mr. Shipman, go ahead.
Thank you for having me here tonight to present this report. In September of 2024, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks completed an inspection of the Birds Rapids waste site. One of the ministry's requirements that resulted from this inspection was that North Grenville needed to decide whether it wanted to reactivate the Birds Rapids site or close it. The municipality had a 25-year plan for this waste disposal site that showed Birds Rapids potentially reactivating in 2018. And it was this plan to reactivate in 2018 that sparked the ministry's requirement. The municipality's current environmental consultant prepared a report that compared the cost to reactivate the site versus closing it. It was found that it was more cost efficient to close the site. There was also an internal staff report done, I believe it was in 2011, that showed minimal capacity left at the site, and that our other inactive site has much more value. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to formally notify the MECP that it intends to close the site. There is no cost associated with the notification process. That said, there will need to be further consultations with the MECP regarding requirements and timelines. There will need to be additional studies completed to determine the exact cost of the closure. Therefore, the recommendation of this report is that Council direct staff to close the Birds Rapids waste disposal site through the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. That concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions.
Okay, colleagues, any questions in regards to this? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, just for the public's knowledge, it's contained in the report, but often I don't think the public read the reports. What's the cost of closing the land waste disposal site? Thank you very much. Versus keeping it open.
According to our consultant's report, the cost to reactivate the site would be approximately 1.7 to 1.8 million, and the cost to close would be around 1.1 to 1.2 million.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues, in regards to this report? I think I was relieved to see that the recommendation obviously went the direction of closing versus reopening. So that is welcome from my perspective. And if there are no other comments, colleagues, then I will entertain a motion in regards to the recommendation. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Sullivan, you're looking to move and second the permanent closure of the Birds Rapids waste disposal site. So, Ms. Preston, is there anything else we need for that particular motion? Okay, it's on the table. And the closure will happen, of course, through the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. And I will call the vote. All in favor? Great. Perhaps much less controversial than the first time, Ms. Dunlop? Okay. So with that, we addressed correspondence through the consent agenda, colleagues. I would keep in mind, however, just a reminder that the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus 2025 Ontario election priorities are quite good, so it's worth a read. They do work very hard to consolidate all of Eastern Ontario's policy considerations and challenges and sort of beautifully articulate them in one document. So it's a good cheat sheet, if you will, of what's happening across the region. Next, we'll go to notice of motions. Any notice of motions? Seeing none. I believe we've dealt with all our bylaws this evening.
Yes, ma'am. One is passed and as revised, and one was not entertained this evening.
Right, indeed. Okay, and we'll move to a period for questions. There is no one left in municipal chambers this evening, and I do not believe there's anyone online. Okay, so then we'll go to close the meeting. This is the confirmatory bylaw, bylaw 2025, to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on February 25th, 2025, be adopted as passed at 9. Sorry, I was moving to the timestamp. So just confirmatory bylaw, just a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Councillor O'Sullivan. So I'll call a question on the confirmation bylaw. That carries. Thank you. And now we get to motion to adjourn, and that is that we'll adjourn this regular meeting of council at 9 p.m. So not too bad, colleagues. I'll look to Councillor Wilson, Councillor Strakian to move us to adjournment. Calling the question. All in favor? Okay.